perspective on the Pierce County, what are the most pressing climate issues in Pierce County today?
There are really three. Like any community in Washington state, we know most of our greenhouse gases are generated through transportation sources. So transportation is the top issue just because of the percentage of our pie of how where our GHGs come from, and because of our clean energy here, our large amount of clean energy. It's by no means 100% clean, but because of our large amount of clean energy, we can electrify the transportation system, and there's a real path forward for reducing GHGs from transportation sources. The second is buildings, commercial and residential buildings, and GHGs generated from that. And the third problem that's connected to both of those here in Pierce County is our land use disaster, and how we are such a sprawling county, and our historical land use patterns have just facilitated the lots of inequities and this where people live, how far people need to travel to do anything. So many communities are car-based, which are carbon-based. So that third one about our land use system, it really creates a lot of unnecessary GHGs because of how we have developed over the years.
Greenhouse gases. Okay.
Yep.
How dangerous are they? Are we in imminent danger? Do we have time to fix these things?
Oh, we're in clear imminent danger, right? If we believe scientists, which I do, the scientific consensus is, we have about 7 or 8 years to be all hands on deck and significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in order to stave off the most catastrophic effects of climate change. And the effects we're already seeing the significant effects. They're alive and well here in Puget Sound, and every study has been clear about what the effects are. And again, they're not going to show up in 2030 or 2050. They're showing up today.
Okay. What would you say to the average consumer to get them motivated to do something in any of the three areas?
I'd say that luckily, with working on the solutions to climate change, fortunately, the co-benefits are absolutely significant. The co-benefits of saving you money, short-term and long-term, the co-benefits of making your life healthier, breathing cleaner air, making your life healthier for all kinds of reasons, improves your personal health, improves our broader public health, reduces inequities with communities of color and low-income communities, puts more money in our pockets, creates innovation, supports innovation, creates new jobs, new businesses, and I think makes our lives simpler. So the co-benefits are significant, and I think when we start talking, really understanding all of those co-benefits, not to mention staving off the worst effects of climate change, right? Not having your house burned down seems like a really big benefit to me. Not having your house be inundated with water seems like a really good co-benefit to me. So when we come to terms with the science and the co-benefits, I just think it's crystal clear and it's in our interest.
I guess we're getting closer to downplaying the attitude that it can't happen here, because it has.
Absolutely. Yeah. The wildfires, right?
Sure.
For a good long time, we thought that Puget Sound communities were immune from wildfires. This last summer, the last 2 summers, we saw that we're not immune, that we actually have significant wildfire danger right here in Pierce County. And not only immediate wildfire danger that put homes and people's lives and businesses at risk, but the wildfire danger caused in the greater Northwest region from the smoke created significant public health issues, significant. People have and will die because of how dirty that air was for how long. People will die. They have died and they will die. It is significant.
Now, I'm new to the state, and it struck me relatively instantly that the state is very proactive on protecting our climate, but there are shortfalls in some areas. What are those areas, and what do you think we need to do?
What do you mean about shortfalls in this context?
Well, we're still not. I'm simultaneously working on, for example, invasive species. And now I know what an invasive species is. They're here and they've taken over, and we should have stopped it a while back, but I don't know how. So where are we lacking in some areas that we need more horsepower behind it?
Yeah, good question. Well, community education, like how we started this conversation, there's, I think the climate change topic has been so esoteric for so long. We have a real opportunity to really talk about how these issues affect all of our daily lives in really tangible ways without being melodramatic, and without talking about faraway problems. So we're deficient in community education that's really applicable to average people's lives, and not being a scientist or an engineer to have the conversation, because I'm neither of those. So I think the community dialogue and the community education is essential and goes a long way for more folks to see why this is in their interest to do something slightly different, and to unpack some of their maybe misconceptions and myths. Because unfortunately, some folks, for a good long time, if you saw the film Who Killed the Electric Car, but for some time there, and to some degree to today, for the last 30 plus years, 30 years or so, there are capitalist interests that have purposefully misinformed, created myths, created division, made climate change issues a political issue unnecessarily. I do not see how this should be a political issue. That this should be a nonpartisan, for the people, save everybody money, save your health, make your life better and easier issue. So, but fossil fuel, do people have money to lose when you change innovation and change consumption habits? Absolutely. So of course, multi-billion-dollar companies are going to see in their interest to do whatever it takes to protect their financial interests, and that's what fossil fuel companies have done for a generation or two now. So they've certainly spent a ton of money confusing the public, confusing lawmakers, creating division in our politics because of their bottom line.
As it comes to electric buses and trucks and cars, has that hampered government's efforts to move ahead with electric vehicles?
The technology is improving all the time, and most transit agencies are slowly adopting. I can't say most. A lot of transit agencies, the ones I'm familiar with, are adopting electrification as a strategy to diversify. They see the wisdom of diversifying their fleet. So at least here in Pierce County, our Pierce Transit bus system, most of the buses run on compressed natural gas. And when the CNG plant had a major issue. There was an explosion and bad things happened several years ago. The buses couldn't run. And so we now have a handful of electric buses. We got some grants from the federal government to do this. The folks who run the transit system see a diversification in energy sources is a really great thing. Right? If that CNG plant ever goes out, we can still run buses with a different fuel source. We're not tied to just one and only one fuel source. So that's been a great thing to understand. They're quieter, they're cleaner, they're significantly quieter. So folks in an urban environment don't have to, the traditional bus is loud and obnoxious sometimes, especially if you're standing on the street corner doing your thing, waiting for the bus or whatever you're doing. Like it's loud and obnoxious, and even indoors. So electric buses, you don't even hear they're running. So it helps the urban environment be a whole lot more hospitable. They don't release the toxic fumes that traditional buses, combustion engine buses do. Kids, taking the bus to school, people waiting on the side of the road for their bus, etc. It's all around better. So are they a little bit more expensive than a combustion bus right now in today's dollars? Yes, by a couple of $100,000. But when you do the return on investment analysis, it pays for itself in a few years, and they are they're cheaper to manage and maintain over time. Less parts, less labor to maintain them. They're more reliable. Over the long term, they save taxpayers money.
Now, this group is really focused on the carbon offset legislation. And as I understand it, well, I don't understand it. So could you give me a description of what that's all about, and how is that a real solution or not?
So Citizens Climate Lobby, they're definitely the expert on their carbon offset bill that they've been championing in the United States Congress for some time. I am not an expert on the bill. I've spoken to Citizens Climate Lobby representatives a few times over the years as I've gotten to understand their strategy and their priority. So like you, I know enough to be dangerous about that bill. There's so much going on in this space. You can't possibly be an expert in everything. But this notion of, as I understand it, this notion of carbon offsets that they're championing is what we've long called a cap and trade system. Again, this needs to be clarified with experts on the bill, where the federal government creates a cap of the amount of carbon that can be emitted through our economy, private and public sector, the whole economy. They put a cap on it. And then the cap and invest and the dividend notion is this notion where you can tax carbon, and there's this theory that when you tax it, obviously it generates revenue, but the taxing mechanism has the private sector change their behavior, has the private sector innovate faster, creates different kinds of competition for the free market. So, but when you, but we all know we're not going to get out of fossil fuels overnight. That's just not practical. Any serious person working on this issue knows this is about being urgent and aggressive about it, but knowing that it needs to take, but knowing it's going to take some time. We don't have all the time in the world, but it's not a flip of a switch. So there's going to be fossil fuels to tax. So the Citizen Climate Lobby bill about tax and the dividend and cap and trade. So you cap the amount of carbon that the entire economy can generate. You tax fossil fuel generation or production. Those dollars go to the U.S. Treasury and they end up being a dividend to, as I understand it, end up being a dividend to the American people. Kind of like everyone gets a tax refund.
Have a copy of the Pierce County Sustainability Plan. I've read a little bit of it. What's your opinion? Is that going to hold up?
It is a really exciting plan where one of the lead sponsors on it, and we're moving it through our community development committee that we chair. We expect to move it out of committee by mid-March and have it before council before the end of March and begin implementing. So it's a really detailed plan, 64 really specific actions that really help us move the needle with the initial goal of being consistent with the state's climate reduction goal, which is 45% reduction of greenhouse gases, 1990 levels, 45% reduction in 1990 levels by the year 2030. And so this plan, if implemented, gets us there. So the plan is certainly the first step. A lot of hard work has gone on by a lot of good people to create the plan. And there's a lot of hard work to do to implement the plan. So there's going to be, after we pass the plan, there's going to be a tremendous amount of work to do to work with staff and the community to implement it. Each and every one of those 64 ideas is a huge body of work for future laws that need to get changed or future things we need to invest in. The plan itself doesn't solve the problem. It's the hard work to come to implement each and every item that's going to get us to our solutions locally.